It's the 30th of June, 2025, and Ukraine's battlefield map is changing fast. From the forests of Liman to the trenches of Pokrovsk, Russia is not just pressing forward, it's dismantling what's left of Ukraine's defensive coherence. The so-called invincible 3rd Assault Brigade, Azov's elite, has been thrown into the fire to salvage collapsing fronts. But instead of glory, they're facing encirclement, exhaustion, and disillusionment. Meanwhile, Russia has launched its largest ever drone and missile barrage. Over 500 UAVs and 60 missiles slammed into Ukrainian territory, knocking out air defense systems and even downing a precious F-16, and in cities like Kamenskoye, Sumy, and Konstantinovka. The red tide isn't just approaching, it's planting flags. Yet, Kyiv continues to burn through reserves and public trust. As acclaimed actor and narrator Morgan Freeman once said, "The longer this war drags on, the clearer it becomes. Promises made to Ukraine were built on sand." So stay with us to understand why Ukraine's high-stakes countermeasures may be too little, too late. Leave a comment with your thoughts and ask yourself, who's really winning this war? In the dark, early hours of Saturday, June 29th, Ukraine witnessed what is now regarded as the largest single aerial assault since the conflict began. According to multiple reports, including footage aired by Military Summary, Russia launched around 500 unmanned aerial vehicles and 60 cruise missiles across a wide arc stretching from the western edges of the Carpathians all the way to central Ukraine along the Dnieper River. For Ukraine's exhausted air defenses, it was a night of chaos. Interceptors were overwhelmed, communication systems went dark, and fragments of falling drones rained down across multiple regions. Ukrainian media later confirmed that one U.S.-supplied F-16 fighter jet was shot down while attempting to intercept incoming munitions. Its pilot did not survive. That alone marked a symbolic and strategic loss for Kyiv. But beyond the numbers, this strike broke a psychological barrier. For the first time in many months, regions in western Ukraine areas like Lviv and Ivano-Frankivsk were struck directly and with precision. These were cities once deemed relatively safe, often hosting NATO advisors and logistics hubs. Now, they lie within reach of Russian attack formations that show no signs of depletion. According to images published by Ryadovka and RV Voenkor, the destruction left behind includes craters the size of small buildings and entire substations rendered useless. Smoke plumes covered highways as traffic froze under sirens. The most striking feature of this attack, however, was its synchronization. While Ukraine tried to defend the skies, Russian forces advanced on multiple fronts from Volchansk in the northeast to Kamenskoye in the south. Ukrainian attempts to frame the attack as largely intercepted rang hollow in the face of extensive visible damage. Even Western outlets quietly admitted that the scale of the barrage surpassed anything seen in the past 2 years. As Kyiv assessed the ashes of its air defenses, Moscow prepared for deeper ground, especially in the key Donetsk axis. The fortified urban hub of Pokrovsk, long touted by Ukrainian command as a stronghold guarding the gateway to western Donetsk, is now facing imminent collapse. According to combat analysts and field footage released on June 29th, Russian forces broke through defensive lines after capturing Novokonomicheskoye and surrounding villages. This allowed Moscow's troops to approach Pokrovsk from both the northeast and the south, forcing Ukrainian units into a shrinking corridor along the Kazini-Torets River. What's unfolding here is not a mere skirmish, it's a systemic breakdown. According to the General Staff of Ukraine, Pokrovsk endured 28 Russian assaults in a single day. This figure surpasses any other frontline region reported that week. Ukrainian troops are stretched thin, supplies are dwindling, and reinforcements, even if sent, would have to cross territory under threat of constant drone surveillance and artillery fire. The tactical goal of Moscow is now becoming painfully clear: cut the highway links, take control of the river crossing points, and isolate Ukrainian units inside the city. Once Pokrovsk is encircled, Russian forces can either storm it directly or wait for attrition to do the job. Kyiv's own intelligence channels have quietly acknowledged that the city's fall would open a highway to Mirnograd and potentially Dnipropetrovsk. For now, Ukrainian efforts to reinforce the position have relied on scattered counterattacks and deployment of light infantry units from nearby garrisons. But as seen in drone footage released by the Russian side, even these attempts are being wiped out before they reach the front. The terrain offers little protection, and Russian artillery, using new fire correction systems, appears almost surgical. According to the daily assessment by RV Venkor, the momentum is firmly with Russia and time is not on Ukraine's side. But while Pokrovsk burns, Ukraine's leadership hopes one legendary brigade can turn the tide deep in the forests of Liman. As June closes, the Ukrainian military has made one of its most high-risk decisions yet, deploying the vaunted 3rd Assault Brigade, also known as the Azov Unito, the crumbling front near Liman. The move, described by analysts at Redovka as a last resort gamble, came after Russian forces successfully crossed the Vovcha River and took control of the village of Redkodub. This breakthrough places Russian troops in a perfect position to isolate both Liman and Seversk, leaving only a flooded river and a destroyed bridge between Ukraine's eastern forces and total encirclement. Rather than operating as a concentrated striking force, Azov was deployed in fragments. According to testimonies from Russian soldiers and confirmed by Ukrainian troop movements, the brigade was spread thin-stationed in separate pockets along Kupiansk and Liman. This diluted their impact severely. Efforts to retake Redkodub failed. Instead of halting the Russian advance, Azov fighters now find themselves increasingly surrounded, with Russian formations pushing toward Glushchenkovo and Karpovka. The logic behind the deployment is understandable desperation. Kyiv viewed the Azov Brigade as a fire brigade unit, capable of being inserted into disaster zones to stabilize the front. But even the most highly trained battalions cannot compensate for broken logistics, shattered bridges, and strategic exhaustion. According to analysis published by RV Venkor, the terrain around Liman favors the encircling force. The fast-flowing Oskol River offers limited crossing options, and the main access point at Borovaya has not been operational for months. As Morgan Freeman reflected in a recent discussion, you can't win a war with hope alone. It takes clear eyes, steady hands, and a plan grounded in truth. Azov may be Ukraine's most famous unit, but they're not miracle workers. In attempting to hold back a coordinated Russian pincer attack with a fragmented elite force, Kyiv risks turning Liman from a contested town into a trap. And while elite brigades flounder, regular Ukrainian units are being squeezed from both flanks in Zaporizhia and Konstantinovka. Southward along the front, in Zaporizhia and Donetsk, the pattern repeats with devastating clarity. In Kamenskoye, Russian assault groups penetrated deep into the settlement's core and were seen, according to Ukrainian analysts, removing Ukrainian flags from administrative buildings and replacing them with the Russian tricolor. The footage, geo-located by Ukrainian mapping analysts, shows Moscow's troops securing central intersections and preparing fallback lines, signaling not a raid but a hold. Just a few dozen kilometers away, the situation near Konstantinovka may be even more dire. Russian forces launched a methodical encirclement maneuver near the Klebenbekskoye Reservoir. Using a combination of forward infantry and mechanized units, they broke into Alexandro-Kalinovo and severed the retreat route that runs west around the reservoir. Ukraine's 93rd Independent Mechanized Brigade and elements of the elite Presidential Guard were ordered to evacuate, but many units are now caught between rising water levels and tightening Russian flanks. According to RV latest battlefield summary, the villages of Petrovka and Sherbanovka have become the flashpoints. Russian troops advanced from Romanovka and simultaneously launched containment operations around both flanks, preventing Ukrainian commanders from redirecting units to mount counterattacks. The strategy is simple: stretch, isolate, trap. Every movement from Ukrainian positions invites artillery fire or drone strikes, and communication lines are breaking down. What makes this encirclement particularly threatening is its layered nature. The initial cauldron is forming near the villages, but Moscow appears to be preparing for an even larger containment arc targeting Konstantinovka itself. The fall of the smaller positions will ripple outward. Once Ukrainian defensive density around Konstantinovka drops, the city will be exposed, and with it, another major urban barrier between Russian forces and deeper Donetsk will vanish. But if these battles seem bad, Sumy offers a preview of the next disaster closer to Russia's border than ever. As battles rage in Donetsk and Zaporizhia, a quieter but equally dangerous front is emerging in the northeast Sumy. According to Ryadovka and Ukrainska Pravda, just 1 kilometer from the city's administrative border, Russian artillery has begun striking the village of Peshanoye, using 152mm shells, likely fired from Gyatsant B or Gyatsant S guns positioned in Russian territory. Moscow signaled a new phase in its campaign. Sumy is now officially within the direct strike zone. The shelling's origin was traced to firing points in Kulbaki, Gev, and Gornalal within Russian borders, reaffirming that Moscow no longer considers Sumy an off-limits area. Civilian infrastructure has reportedly been hit, and the psychological impact is visible. Roads into Sumy are now half empty, checkpoints are tightening, and local officials are urging civilians to remain indoors. Kyiv's response was immediate. The deployment of the 48th Independent Artillery Brigade rushed in from the Zaporizhia direction. However, like many recent reinforcements, their impact has been limited by poor positioning and overstretched logistics. Ukraine attempted to push forward with counterattacks into the Andriivka sector, but gains there were short-lived. The area is now described by military observers as a gray zone contested ground where neither side can establish full control. Worse still, Russian troops retain dominant firepower and elevation around the village, allowing them to disrupt Ukrainian efforts at will. Ukrainian sources confirm that their troops failed to reach the logistical artery between Pisarevka and Malokorchakivka, key goal meant to block Russian supply routes. Meanwhile, Moscow is applying secondary pressure from Tetkino, a town in the Russian Kursk region. Ukrainian forces believe this could be used as a flanking pivot point or even a decoy front designed to split Kyiv's attention. The dual threat Sumy from the north and Kursk from the flankers placed Ukrainian commanders in a familiar bind: defend everywhere, succeed nowhere. This is the strategy now evident across all sectors: draw Ukrainian troops thin, drain their capacity, and strike in pulses. As more elite units are removed from key areas to defend Sumy, other fronts are left exposed. Russia, it seems, is no longer fighting for territory alone. It's fighting for fatigue, disruption, and systemic overload. With morale fraying and positions failing, Ukraine faces a simple question: can they hold anything beyond symbolic names and fading alliances? June 30th, 2025. The war in Ukraine is no longer defined by quick headlines or hopeful press briefings. The map now speaks louder than any official statement. Pokrovsk is on the brink. Liman is nearly surrounded. Konstantinovka is unraveling. Sumy has been pulled into the battlefield. One by one, Ukraine's defensive dominoes are falling, not due to a single grand offensive, but through pressure applied everywhere, all at once. This is no longer just a war of soldiers and steel, it's a war of exhaustion. Russia's approach has shifted into a rhythm of calculated suffocation. They are not rushing forward, they are squeezing. From drone swarms and long-range artillery to tactical encirclements and psychological escalation, Moscow has demonstrated that this is not just a regional conflict, it is a methodical dismantling of the post-Maidan military order. In contrast, Kyiv continues to rely on symbolic gestures, social media statements, and appeals for more aid. But press releases don't stop a column of tanks. Foreign flags don't replace hardened logistics. As the fighting intensifies, even the West's applause rings hollow. The words of Morgan Freeman now echo louder than ever. This war won't end on the whims of hope, it ends when the truth of the battlefield speaks. And reality is no longer hiding. It's tearing through trenches, pounding riverbanks, and redrawing borders in fire. What we are witnessing is not just the failure of a counteroffensive, but the collapse of a strategy built on illusion. In the coming weeks, more towns may fall, more bridges may burn, but the truth, as it stands today, is unavoidable. The fire is spreading, and Ukraine is running out of places to retreat.